One of the strangest phenomena you'll ever experience, if you have the opportunity to, is meeting Barack Obama. Because can I tell you why? Because generally, leaders of nations, they have a very stiff vibe to them. And I guess it comes with the job, and there's a certain respect you afford them. And I mean, if you grew up African, there's a respect you afford your elders and a person in power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the funny thing is, like President Obama, he's loose and he's funny and he's got swag and everything. Do you know what I mean? So then when he'll talk to you, he's got like jokes and everything. He'll say things and it's funny. You know what I mean? So you'll be there and you'll be all stiff and he'll be like, "Hello, Mr. President. How are you, Mr. President?" He's like, "Oh, Trevor, what's going on? How you doing, baby?" And he's got all these jokes and like, "Oh, you know what you got in life? What you happened?" And he hit you with this, and hit you with that, and be like, "Oh, you got that swag, baby. Do it different." And then if you're not careful, you'll get carried away, and then you'll be like, "You damn straight I'm doing that, bro." And be like, I'm the president. What are you doing?" And you're like, I'm so sorry. So you always feel like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it reminds me of like if you grew up in a very traditional way, in the South in America, I know, in Africa, in the Middle East, you always have those uncles who are really cool. And then whenever they walk in the house, they start talking trash to you or whatever. I've seen like friends of mine in the Middle East, they'll be like, "Habibi, look at you, Habibi, what?" In India and Africa, they'll be like, "Look at your shoes, look at your jacket, And then you'll say something back, you'll be like, "Look at your haircut." They'll be like, "Don't speak to your elders like that." And you're like, they're like, don't forget. Do you feel pressure whenever you ask to come out? It's like in the movies when, they need that home run and the bases are loaded and the team's losing and they go, "Barack, we need you to hit this out the park. We might lose everything." Do you feel the pressure? Does it get to you? And second of all, what does it say about the state of the Democratic Party that they always need you to come out and do that before an election?
Look, I think that the reason we did better than expected can be attributed to not me or anything I did, but it has to do with we recruited some excellent candidates. You look like Westmore in Maryland, Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. You look at our Senate candidates, John Fetterman and Mark Kelly. They are committed, passionate, down to earth. They connect with people. And so I come in mainly to shine a spotlight on them. Okay. So that's point number one. And the second thing that happened in this midterm, and we've seen it now for 3 elections, so I'm starting to feel pretty hopeful that this is a habit. Young people are voting. And you got higher. It has been many times remarked how I got thumped during midterms during my presidency. Mm-hmm. And part of it was that voting rates were really low. People, in some sense, I think a lot of Democrats felt, all right, Obama's there, we'll be okay. And, if it turns out that McConnell and Boehner and others suddenly have power, then that greatly restricts what a president can do. And I think that lesson was learned. Trump comes in, and suddenly 2018, 2020, and now this one, you've seen young people come in, and they're typically voting at a rate of 70 to 30, 60 to 40 Democrat to Republican.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference. And so their enthusiasm, I think, is what really drove this election.
I agree with that in terms of the people who actually voted, but young people don't seem to be turning out as much, So the ones who did voted overwhelmingly Democrat.
Yes.
But then the number of young voters seems to be dwindling from election to election, and many young voters are saying they feel disillusioned. They feel like America hasn't made a way for them. They don't see a future for themselves.
Well, look, what is always true is young people are going to vote at slightly lower rates than old people like me because they've got better things to do. Michelle and I are sitting at home, eating dinner. We've kind of run out of things to say. Well, let's go vote. Young people, Malia and Sasha, they're out. They got all kinds of stuff. So that's always going to be the case, that young people's voting rates are a little bit lower. They are higher now than they were in the midterms when I was president. Mm-hmm. And in such a polarized environment, 1%, 2%, 3%, if they're turning out at 21% instead of 18%,
makes a difference.
That can make an enormous difference.
Right. Bill Gates was hosting his goalkeepers event in New York, and so he invited me to come and speak. And they're doing some amazing things, not just the organization, the people they're supporting. And I get to the event and I speak for like 10 minutes, and I get off stage and I'm like waving at the crowd, and I'm walking backwards off the stage, moving to the backstage area, and then I crash into like a person. And as I crash into them, I see the eyes of people looking at me, and everyone's like, oh shit, what have you done? You know what I mean? And I'm like, calm down, humans bump humans all the time. And I turn, and the person I bumped into was Barack Obama, right? Yeah, but like physically, like, when I say bump, I mean like bump, like, you know? And so I turn, and then he's like, but literally, his hands are up, and then he's like, watch where you go. And then, he said, watch where you walk. And so I turned, and then I was like, hey man, I'm walking over here. And you should have seen everyone's face. They were like, oh shit. Because I think they thought I didn't recognize him or I didn't know who he was. You could see people like, that's the president of the United States of America. And I was like, yo, man, calm down. And so I was like, hey, how are you, Mr. President? I haven't seen you in a while. And he's like, oh, doing good. How you been? You good? You good? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing good. And like, I'm looking at his face, and I didn't intend this, but I'm looking into his eyes and I'm speaking to him. And in that moment, I really, like, he's looking really, really good. Like, his skin is looking fuller. Do you know what I mean? No, he doesn't look as stressed as he was. And so it slipped out. I didn't plan it at all. So I'm speaking to him. He's like, how you doing? Da, 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 da. And then he says that. And then I was like, you're looking cute, Mr. President. And he goes, well, thank you. And I was like, no, I meant like, you look good.
We are still here with President Barack Obama chatting democracy, disinformation, and who is better looking between us. I won. Let's start with...
The real question is, how will he look when he's 60? 61. Everybody's attractive when they're in the 20s and 30s. Come on.
I'm almost 40, sir.
That's
I'm almost 40.
Almost?
Yeah, almost.
That doesn't count.
Almost.
That doesn't count.
Let's
Live
talk,
a little bit.
Let's talk about... I plan to.
I want to talk to Barack Obama, the man, the human being. You say, like, one of the things you miss is being anonymous. You have dreams, some of the most boring dreams, in my opinion, about just walking through the streets
right.
and nobody recognizing you.
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that you could do that if you did not roll with a squad. That's what I think your problem. You roll with the Secret Service. So I think if you went to, like, South Africa, if you walked around in parts of South Africa, no one would recognize you. I think if you walked around in parts of maybe Malaysia, some parts, because I've seen Barack Obama's in these other, like when I was in Bali, they have one of their ministers in government looks exactly like you. And I remember I got there, I was like, oh, why they got Barack on the wall? And they were like, no, that's not Barack. I think you could walk around in a lot of countries if you just left everybody behind. I think that's what it is.
No, yeah. In all seriousness, I completely agree with you. There is a attractive nuisance to.
Yes.
There's a bustle, and suddenly people are with glasses and they're talking, and so immediately everybody, what's the commotion about? And then
Yes,
at that point,
exactly.
you are attached to it. Unfortunately, I don't have the option of getting rid of all those folks. Although I will say that when I'm on a bike, which Michelle and I have done sometimes, or even when we're walking, right, and the service is pretty far behind us, we can actually get away with taking a walk if there's not a big crowd.
I think Michelle is too famous, though. You can get away with it.
Well, that's the point. Although what she says is, and I've quoted her on this, she can, tie up her hair, put on some sunglasses. With me, I'd have to have an operation on my ears in order to properly disguise myself. So, if it's cold and I've got a hoodie or a ski cap, maybe I can.
Maybe you can get away with it.
Exactly.
Do you spend a lot of your time online? Because it's not like you can go out much. It's not like you're at the mall. It's not.
No,
then how do you? then how do you know so much about everything? Because you know a lot about like music. You're in touch. You know about what's happening. So if you're not online, do you have like a person who comes to tell you what's on Twitter?
Well, I spend enough time online to figure out what's going on. But for example, I read headlines. One of the benefits of being president, at least if you were doing your homework while you were president, is, usually most of the time when you look at a headline, you kind of figure out the context of it. You don't have to, if I read about the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, I know the details of that. I know the players involved.
Okay, yes,
so I can skim it, right? When it comes to music, Sasha and Malia oftentimes are my eyes and ears, right? They'll pull in what some of the new tracks are. They're playing them in the house. I'll ask them what this is.
Who have they put you on to?
I use Shazam, which
But
works surprisingly
who have they put you
well.
on to now? Who's the latest artist they put you on to right now?
Let's see. Well, Sasha, she goes into the deep cuts. She gets on SoundCloud. She pulls all kinds of stuff up. Some of it is what you'd expect. Bryce, the Bryson Tillers, the Lil Uzi Vert.
Okay.
The stuff that is, to be expected in her generation. The flip side, what's fun is it goes in the opposite direction too. So I had to explain to them about Joni Mitchell, and I play a few tracks, and they go, "Oh, okay." So they're learning some old cuts from their dad as well. They don't adopt any of my dancing styles, but some of my music they appreciate.
Let's talk a little bit about. Let's loosen things up. Let's unbutton one of those buttons on the shirt there. As someone who I consider to be one of the best deliverers of jokes and roasts, are you going to be more careful going forward about who you roast? And I say this because you roasted Donald Trump, he ran for president. You roasted Kanye West, he ran for president. So I don't know if you've noticed, but you have an ability to inspire people to run for the highest office in the land with some of the jokes that you tell about them.
Well, I should roast people I admire more. I'll start roasting you, man. Who knows? Although you weren't born here, so But look, I was able to get away with it apparently. Who knows?
Before I let you go, I wanted to know one last thing, and that is, being president of the United States is arguably the toughest job in the world. When you transition back to personal life, I wonder what that is like, because unlike you, I don't have that power. I've never been able to just change a thing in the world or do something about it. But now in many ways you are like me, in that you see the thing on the TV and then you get angry or sad, but you cannot really do anything about it. And so I wonder, as former President Barack Obama, have you transitioned into that completely, or do you find different ways to try and fix the problems that you see in the world?
Well, first of all, I'm not anything like you. I still have a lot more influence and clout. So let's just be clear. Come on, man.
I was hoping you'd let that
keep
slide.
Things in perspective.
I was hoping you just let that one slide. I was hoping you'd just be like, yeah, Trevor, in many ways.
Look, the truth is that I did not have those kinds of withdrawals, and I know that there are people who I know who've had them when they leave public life, and very visibly, they want to get back on stage.
Yeah.
Michelle and I, that's something we share. We feel good about the work we did. We don't feel anxiety about not being the center of attention. We get frustrated, like I think citizens around the world and here in the country do, when we see something unjust or unfair. And yes, the goal, I think, for us is to find new ways to have that same impact, understanding that we'll never have the exact same impact as you have in the Oval Office. But a lot of the work around the foundation is, you said create a lot of Obamas. I'm not sure that's the goal, but if 10 years, 20 years down the road, there are 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 young people who are now moving into positions of authority and power, and in some ways have been shaped by our example in a positive way. That's a legacy that may exceed anything that we did, while we were in our formal positions, and that feels pretty good.
I wondered if maybe, you have any tips for me as, because you and I, like, we're basically the same. We're basically the same.
I think you're going to have to really focus on relearning things like driving, pressing your own elevator buttons.
I think you have different ideas of what my job is and what your job is.
When was the last time you were at the dry cleaners?
I was actually on 53rd Street. That's where I go. I take it myself. Yeah. We're very, you don't, like, you're very like, that's like I said, you're Mr. President forever. You have Secret Service forever. That's correct,
well,
right?
I do. And it...
I barely get to keep my hoodies after this.
I still am in a bubble. I thought I could escape it.
Yeah.
Quick story, since we're in New York. I used to say, oh, you know what? Once I get out of here, I'm gonna just be able to like walk through Central Park, and it's gonna, and I'll just put like on a baseball cap, and it's gonna be fine. And Michelle's all like, yeah, okay. Good luck with that. And the first time I tried it, I got like half a block. And then suddenly there was this swarm, and there's phones and traffic stopping, and it didn't work. So, I guess what I would say though is that you will be missed here, but But we were talking backstage. You're already following. One piece of advice that I would have is leave when your poll numbers are high. That's how they'll remember you.